Every project and job site produces a wealth of data that can be used to improve future projects. However, the majority of that data, 96%, is left unused. That's a lot of critical insights you could be using to drive better business results. Achieving data maturity can be the key to gaining a competitive advantage. But how do you get there? Let's start from the ground up and look at the 4 key stages: foundation, learning, leveraging, and optimized. First, every project starts with a foundation. For data, this means setting up the systems to align how data is collected across the organization and equip your teams correctly. Get to know your data, look within your projects, and identify what else you're collecting on the job site. And think about how you're putting your data into Procore. The data you put in feeds the analytics you get out, quality in, quality out. Once you've laid a solid foundation, you can start learning from your data. This means exploring data sets, building reports and dashboards, and fixing data quality issues. In this stage, companies are training staff, automating manual reporting processes, refining their data strategy and business processes, identifying trends in data, and learning the value of data. When your data foundation is in place and you have a strong grasp of data sets, now you're ready to start leveraging your data. At this stage of development, companies are adopting reports and dashboards across the organization, integrating other tools like ERP systems, using data to monitor their overall business, and making decisions. And there's a high degree of trust in the data. It's exciting to shift from looking back at what happened to looking forward to what will happen. You're switching from defense to offense. Once data is at the core of your company's culture and you're maximizing its value, your company is now optimized. In this final stage, data is recognized across the company as a strategic asset. Team efficiency is significantly increasing, project margins are on the rise, and processes are changed based on lessons learned. Data is now a competitive advantage, and you're unlocking insights to stay ahead of the competition. When data drives your business, you can create predictive actions across the entire build process. Believe me, I've experienced data maturity transformation firsthand across different disciplines and teams. It's an essential and amazing process that empowers you to make decisions based on data and bring about real change. I encourage you all to join me on this journey. Now, we're going to hear from Julian Clayton, Vice President of Product for General Contractors, who's sitting down with Atul Paralkar, Director of Business Intelligence at JRM Construction Management, to talk about how data is a strategic asset that can be used to help mitigate risk and improve visibility across the entire business portfolio.
Atul, thanks for making the trip out and joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Now, you and I have known each other for a bit, and
Yeah.
you know, one word that I hear from you probably more than any other word is data. And
Yes.
right, and specifically how you feel that unlocking data is the next frontier for the construction industry. Can you expand on that a little bit?
You know, any informed decision making has to do with data, right? Or I think there was some quote that said, anything else that is not data is opinion. And so all the actuals feed into some information, which will then lead to insights and then actionable insights. What we understand that even as we use certain modules and not the others, you can often gain a lot of information from repeatable, consistent, measurable pieces of those platforms. And sometimes they will tell us how your projects end up, of course, at the end of the job. But sometimes they tell you, or they give you the right flag to understand, are the turnaround times different? Are the response times for RFIs or submittals different? And it educates the efficiency of operating on a project. It educates management to understand how the project team is doing. And it actually also tells you, let's say on the bid analytics, sometimes of how the market is moving, right? And that's what we want to gain as much insight from that information. And for companies that want to use information like that want to use data, have to implement the right platform, have to understand the maturity of how that data flows through, which comes with the right platform, and then they can use it. You cannot use data immediately off the shelf without implementing it correctly.
I love that you pointed that out. And one thing that I've heard companies talk about when management is not aligned to that is that leadership comes in and says, we want to look at our portfolio. We want to look across our entire portfolio and see how healthy we are. And then immediately they realize, oh, we can't do that until we get everything straight at the project level, right? And then they go down and they look at the project level and they realize, oh, well, we can't really get that right until we make sure everybody's consistently setting things up the same way so that we're comparing apples to apples and not comparing a hospital project to a bridge project, for example.
Absolutely.
Right? And then they go a step further and realize, well, none of that's going to work until we prove to the field that this is actually valuable to them, like where we show them the value of collecting that data. And I know that your reputation, obviously, as Groundbreaker of the Year, is one that you've been fairly successful in that. I'd love for you to kind of pick an example of where you've specifically shown the field the value of the data that they collect and how that rolls up to the bigger business to give them a different type of a sense of accomplishment.
A few times, honestly, and it's not just the field, by the way, it's across the board. But we were able to tie PM performance to end project outcomes to a lot of this data coming from their RFI turnaround times or submittal response times, and see that if we need to pick up something before things become a problem, then that's what we need to do. So a huge part of that was aging of change management, right? Or pending changes. And every company wants to understand how much exposure they have for the work that has to be done or that they want to take on at risk. And that was incredibly insightful to understand that, of course, there is a story behind a lot of these changes individually, but to know that they're on board and for management to have visibility on that exposure has been fantastic. So we actually saw that, whether it's 30, 60, 90, or sometimes 240 days, maybe there's a story, but as long as you have it up front and you can make that informed decision that we want to carry this or we don't want to and we want to resolve it, you can escalate, or you can resolve it at a certain way, or you can let go knowing that there is a certain resolution coming later on. We also, you could see other risk in the form of how much workload you're giving a particular subcontractor when they're pre-qualified for a certain amount, but you can see exactly how much commitment is allocated by location, by segment, by project types, by the nature of the work. And that kind of insight effectively reduces your risk exposure. And you will see benefits that go well beyond just the financial outcome of a project. It'll go towards the business of construction, not just the construction business.
I love that you look at it that way. And to kind of circle back before we close out, I would love to understand, when we talk about the financial side and the process side, round tripping back to that pre-construction process, you're obviously implementing some changes in your process as a result of what you've learned through that.
So Julian, you hit the nail on the head when you said that you have to make some very fundamental changes to actually get the data the right way, to then use the data the right way. And that is, so there are some very foundational changes in terms of standardizing your work breakdown structure, making sure that the way you estimate a project, also there's a way to flow it through a budget setup for projects. And then you get the actuals, and then that educates you or informs you while creating another estimate, while going after another bid. So we realize that while the flow stays consistent in that loop of information, but how you structure that work breakdown structure is extremely important. So this is a conversation with estimating and your cost controllers or cost managers to understand how do you roll up some of the estimating work and how do you actually execute and track that cost. So they're working off of the same song sheet, right? You want to work with some standards, which then you can pick and analyze later on across the board. And that happens to be the most critical part of this conversation, is standardizing information. Then you can go into the conversations of the maturity of that data and how you can use it to analytics or prescriptive or predictive pieces of things. Yeah.
And everybody in your organization from top to bottom that's having that conversation is on the same page. Atul, I got one last question for you. I just want to know, what is the one thing that you are most excited about in the next phase of your data journey?
It is the journey, actually. It's where the journey is leading. To understand the maturity of information in an organization is to understand, are you still at advanced analytics? Are you taking it to ML, AI? And that's when you talk about predictive and prescriptive. And a lot of entities use that as a pitch, as a sales tool, which is attractive. Everybody identifies with it. It's very jazz, right? It's in the moment. But people don't understand what goes into actually lining up that information to then be able to do the ML and AI parts of that data. And I think we are at the beginning where the adoption is going to be a lot widespread. And I'm extremely excited to see how your own portfolio, whether it's the last 5 years, 30 years, 40 years, if you can get that kind of data, how can you educate yourself and then eventually the industry to predictively, ahead of the incident, flags a risk that might be coming up, right? So this is where we're talking about predictive and prescriptive. We may be, for the size of the maturity of the company, a couple of years away from that, but I'm very excited about what that can bring, including the advances that we see in the wider market, not just construction, that are happening with data. There is a lot of conversation about who owns the IP for some of this information, and that's a conversation we all seem to be keeping our ears on. But how we use that is perhaps more relevant to us right now.
I love it, Atul. That's got me excited too. So thanks again for coming out. Really great to see you again, and looking forward to more of these conversations with you.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see the journey JRM Construction Management is on, and a great validation of how the Procore platform is at the center of their data maturity transformation. Thanks for joining us today to learn how an effective data strategy can boost your success and help make every project more productive and predictive.